Our God is of the sort that if he could have found one, he would have delayed the judgment. Oh, he did. He did. As we saw in the preceding chapters. Israel's whole history has been a history of rebellion and of God saying, you deserve to get it, but I'm not going to do it now. You deserve to get it, but I'm not going to do it. What patience! What patience! What love! When you ask the Hebrew people, what is your God like? They do not tell us, well, he's a stern, severe, gimlet-eyed old tyrant who, if you look at him cross-eyed, will smack you. He is merciful. He is gracious. He is slow to anger. As Brother Bill told us earlier in the week. Full of compassion. Patient. That had been their experience. They are not saying, they're saying, it's not surprising if God got angry at us. What is surprising is that he didn't get angry a whole lot sooner, and that he didn't just smash us a long time ago. What kind of love is this? What kind of patience? What kind of tenderness? God said, I look for one. A Moses. An Abraham. One. What about you? Where you live? Are there gaps in the walls? Can he look to you? I'm sure not a prince. No. But are you a people? Can't get off the hook. And then we turn to chapter 23. The two faithless sisters. As I said yesterday, the Judeans are tempted to say, well, yes, Samaria got destroyed. They deserved it. I mean, they were worshiping, can you believe it? They were worshiping golden bulls. My land. Huh, of course they got fried, but we down here in the south, we know better. God says, yes, you do. And therefore your judgment will be the more severe. The names that Ezekiel chooses for the two sisters are interesting. Oholah, we don't know exactly where that comes from. It may be the idea of a tent. Yeah, this mighty Samaria, what is it? It's a tent. And a wind can blow it flat in a minute. That may be what's going on there. But for the younger sister, for Judah, there's something else going on. Oholibah. Now remember that people knew their Bibles very well. They had to, because there weren't that many scrolls of the biblical books available, so you had to memorize the thing. And people in those days had these prodigious memories. Even in the last century, there were rabbis who had the whole Old Testament memorized, word for word. And it was said that if you gave them, their Bible, the one they were familiar with, and you put a pin through a letter on the first page, and imagine that pin going through the whole Bible, they could tell you what letter it would go through on every page. Now, I'm saying people knew their Bible, and so they were ready to hear these connections in ways that we're not. Turn in your Bible, please, to chapter 36 of Genesis. Genesis 36:2. Esau took his wife from the daughters of Canaan Ada, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah. Who are you, Judah? Oh, you're the Canaanite wife of Esau. Wow. Talk about a slap in the face. Oh, no, we're the pure daughter of the Lord. No, you're not. You're a Canaanite wife of Esau. Oholibah. And so, God says, yes, let's look at the older sister. What did she do? She turned away from God, lusting after the wonderful Assyrian warriors. She trusted Assyria more than she would trust the Lord. And she was destroyed. But what have you done, Judah? And we're over at verse 22 now, if you've got your Bible open there on your lap. Excuse me, verse 11. Verse 11. What have you done? Yes, you started out the same way as your older sister. You made deals with the Assyrians. But then, verse 14, you saw, hey man, maybe the Assyrians are going to collapse here, and so you changed horses. And you fell in love with images on the walls of the Chaldeans. That's verse 14. You changed horses. You changed your allegiance from Assyria to Babylon. When you saw what I did to Assyria, did you say, my land, we shouldn't be trusting these foreign nations and their power? No. You just switched from one foreign nation to another. And that wasn't enough, he says. Yes, verse 17, the Babylonians came to her in the bed of love. They defiled her with their immorality. But that wasn't enough, he says. Verse 19, when Babylon began to get a little rough on you, what did you do? Did you say, God have mercy, we're sorry we've trusted the Babylonians. We won't trust the nations again. Oh no, you went to Egypt. And the language here is very gross. Very gross. And I'll just give you that hint. You lusted after these Egyptians. So he says, the Samaritans, all they did was sell themselves to the Assyrians. You sold yourselves to the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians. You think you're going to get off better than Samaria did? Now this leads into what I want to talk with you about in the oracles against the nations. God has called his people to be a light to the nations. His people, little, helpless, insignificant in the midst of these great empires, nevertheless, God says, I want you to trust me exclusively, and you will be the means whereby the nations will know that I am the Lord. Because you've trusted me, and I've delivered you and protected you, the nations will know I am the Lord. And what has happened? What have the two sisters done? Have they trusted God and been a light to the nations? No. They've trusted the nations and made it appear that God is helpless. That's what God is saying to you and me. Oh, child, trust me and let me demonstrate in you all that I can be for the world. This is missionary day, isn't it? What's our mission going to be? Are we going to trust the nations? Or are we going to trust God? Are we going to trust the nations and make God appear helpless? Or Or are we going to trust God and show the nations the way out of their darkness? The two sisters, Oholah and Oholibah. What are you trusting? Say, well, I'm not trusting any nation. I don't have any stocks and bonds in Cambodia. No. But the point, you see, is to trust the nations is to trust human greatness, human glory, human power. Where is your trust? So then we come to chapter 24. The conclusion of this subdivision that I have labeled Jerusalem's sins, past and present. There are two elements in this chapter. One is Jerusalem, the boiling pot, and the other one is the death of Ezekiel's wife. You may remember, well, you probably don't, but you might, back in chapter 11, the people in Jerusalem were saying, Jerusalem is the pot, and we're the meat in it, and the pot is going to protect us from the flames. And God says, don't you believe it? You're not the meat in the pot. The meat in the pot is all those people you've slain by your injustice and your misleading prophecies, all of those things. Those good people, those righteous people who may have lost their lives because of your sinfulness, they're the ones who are going to be protected. You are going to be outside in the fire. Now Ezekiel picks up that same pot imagery again. And he draws the picture. If you read it, you know it. He says, yes, the meat is in the pot, and you are the meat this time. And the fire is going to get hotter and hotter and hotter, and the water is going to boil away, and the meat is going to be burned to a crisp, and the fire is going to get hotter and hotter until the very corrosion on the brass is going to be burned away. Jerusalem is a pot, all right, and you've trusted in Jerusalem. You've trusted in its glory. You've trusted in its greatness. If you've listened to me for a few years, and I was noticing last night, this is the 8th time I've been at Indian Springs since 1971, so you know everything I know. Whatever you trust in place of God will turn on you and destroy you. Whatever you trust in place of God will turn on you and destroy you. Trust human love, it'll eat you alive. Trust money, it'll consume you until you live for it. I was fascinated at a story that the Salvation Army Commissioner told when I was with him for a few minutes yesterday. Well, actually, it was his wife. She said she was at the kettle during the Christmas fund drive for the Salvation Army, and the richest man in the town came by. And his wife put a little bit in the kettle, and she said, now, honey, you put yours in too. He said, I already have sent in my check. She said, now, honey, you need to put something in. It's all right. I've already sent in my check. And she wouldn't let him go. And finally, he fumbled around in his pocket, and he got a dime and dropped it in. Well, the commissioner's wife said, when I got back to the office, I told my husband about this, and we checked through, and sure enough, he had sent in his check, $5. Whatever you trust in place of God will destroy you. Money had devoured his capacity for generosity. Whatever you trust in place of God, and the Judeans were trusting Jerusalem, and God says, Jerusalem, Your Jerusalem will become the boiling pot that will scorch you. But God says, nevertheless, what I'm doing here is in the end going to cleanse Jerusalem. The fire is going to get hot enough to burn all the corrosion off this pot. I said it before, I'll say it again. God is not interested in destroying the pot. He's not interested in destroying His people. If He lets the fire come into your life, it is not because He hates you. It is not because He's tired of you and wants to get rid of you. If He lets the fire come into your life, write it down. It is in order to purge you. Does God send bad things? I don't believe He does so directly. On the other hand, I don't believe He's just standing around watching a sinful world do bad things to us. He allows these things to happen. He could prevent them. For some reason, He has chosen not to do this. He has allowed it to happen. And because He's allowed it to happen, therefore He is sovereign over it, and He can work through it for blessing in your life. That's the real issue. The real issue is not, will bad things happen to you? The answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. This is a fallen world. The only question is, what will they do to me? Will they break me, or will they refine me? Now, what about the death of Ezekiel's wife? As I said yesterday, if I've got a question or two that I want to ask God, this would be one of them. Wait a minute, God, Ezekiel's been faithful to you. Ezekiel has been saying all these hard things. He's been acting out all these humiliating, demeaning things. It's not fair. I think the question is, Ezekiel, what do you think it'll take to reach these people? What do you think it will take to show them the heart of God? The anguish that is deeper than words. He wasn't even allowed to mourn for her. He said, you can sigh in private, but in public, the anguish deeper than words in the heart of God over the death of His beloved. And you notice when this started, the day the word came, this day the siege of Jerusalem has started. This day, Jerusalem's death has begun. And that day, Ezekiel's wife died. And you can imagine the people saying, oh, did you hear? Ezekiel's wife died. Oh, really? Wow. I'll bet he's really mourning, isn't he? Oh, it's amazing. He's not saying anything. He's mute. And you can just see the anguish all over his face, but he's not doing a thing. He hasn't torn his clothes. He hasn't shaved his beard that's grown back. He's still wearing his hat. What do you think? Man, too deep for words. And did you hear what happened today? He says the siege of Jerusalem started today. How high a cost am I willing to pay to reach those who perhaps cannot be reached in any other way? How high a price How much devotion to God. How much concern for a world. How high a price. You may have heard the story. A young couple went to Papua New Guinea to reach a tribe of people who were far back in the jungle. They moved in with them. For 2 years they worked with them. 2 years. Nothing. Hard people. Contemptuous of these white-skinned foreigners who seemed to know nothing about how to live. They had a little boy who had been born just before they went there. After 2 years, this little boy began to be ill. And the illness came on very rapidly, and they were not able to get out. But they prayed, oh God, this could be it. This could be the turning point. If you'll heal our son in a dramatic way, these people will see that you're God. They will know you are the Lord. Oh, heal him, God. We want you to heal him. But most of all, we want you to heal him to reach these people. Heal him, God. Heal him. The people of the village stood around and watched. Implacable faces. And the boy got sicker and sicker. And within a matter of 24 hours, he was dead. And the couple, alone, no family, no friends, these hard-faced, hard-hearted people watching them. They gave their grief to the Lord. They gave their baby to the Lord. They took him out, buried him, put up a little white cross, wept, committed him to the Lord, entrusted his soul to the Lord, entrusted themselves to the Lord, went back into their hut, sat there in the darkness, silent in their grief, both thinking, guess we might as well start packing. It's over. Those people, they know our God failed us. The next morning, we're sitting in the same place, and they heard some noises outside their hut. Got up and pulled aside the curtain, and there sat the chief right in front of the door, and behind him sat everybody else in the village. And the young man said, "Sir, what is it you want?" And the man said, "Would you teach us about your Jesus? We don't know how to die like that." What price to reach a world? What price? They had it all figured out. God would accomplish his purposes through the healing of their son. And God said, no, I'm going to accomplish my purposes through the death of your son. Is that all right? Well, we've got 5 minutes to do 8 chapters. That shouldn't be a problem, should it? But we've come to the end of this judgment section, and I point out to you how it ends. It ends not with the triumphant cry of the warrior. Ha ha! I've smashed them. I've killed them. I've slaughtered them. I've given them to the mouth of the sword. Boy, I've been wanting to do that for 500 years. Ha ha! I got them. No, it ends. It ends with a bereft husband sitting in the darkness alone, unable even to speak, as he groans in his soul for the death of his beloved. Don't ever believe that a vicious, hard-hearted God will send someone to an eternity of damnation with glee in his voice. Don't ever believe that. He will let us go to our choice, but in brokenness and sorrow, mute at the loss to his own soul. And so the picture changes. We've been looking at one slide for a long time here, a pretty grim slide, and now a new one comes up on the screen. It's Missionary Day. The oracles against the nations. Judgment, judgment, judgment. But did you notice it? Did you have your pencil out? How many times? Why is God doing this? That they may know I am the Lord. Did you see it? Did you mark it down? One way or another, the world is going to know that He is the Lord. If we choose to ally ourselves with their gods, to bow at the shrines of their gods, and allow them then to lord it over us, and in the end, as these nations did, to mock God and to believe that they are God, then they will know. But they will know through the sword, through the hand of judgment. Every tongue shall proclaim. Every knee shall bow. Tragically, a whole lot of them are going to bow unwillingly. But they will know I am the Lord. But that's not the way God intended it. God intended it that we, because of our complete trust in Him, would demonstrate to them a God who is truly holy. Oh, they call their gods holy, but they're not. They're not really other than this world, which is what holiness means to begin with. No, they're just part of this world. If we, by our lives, will show the presence of a God who is truly other, who enables us to be faithful when there's no reason to be faithful, to love when there's no love coming back, to be true when everybody around us is false, to be one when everybody around us is 2 or 3 or 6 or 10, then the world will know. And that's God's goal. God's goal isn't that I go to heaven. God's goal is that the world go to heaven. Through me, through you. And so that's the picture here. Because Judah has failed, has trusted the nations instead of trusting God. The nations have been led to believe that they are God. Did you pick that up? Several times. They've exalted themselves. I am God. I have made the river. It is mine. Why do they believe that? Because our lives have allowed them to believe it. Now, one last thing, and then we'll pick up on this tomorrow. There's a pattern in the prophets. If you're taking notes, let me lay it out for you this way. There are 7 steps here. Number 1, and you see this pattern in the prophets over and over again. Number one, God offers us himself and his blessings. God comes to us and says, here I am, children. Would you like me to be your God? Would you like all of the resources of heaven to be yours? That's number one. God offers us himself and his blessings. Number two, the people initially trust him. They say, wow, what a deal. All right. Yes. Ha ha. We're the only people in the world you offered this to, right, God? No. Yes, sure, right, we're yours. We're on your side. We'll do whatever you say. It won't be a problem. It's exactly what the Hebrew people did at the foot of Mount Sinai. Are you going to keep this covenant? Oh yeah, Moses, it's not a problem. We can do that. They didn't know about original sin, did they? They didn't know about the perverse will within us. Well, that's one of the reasons God gave them the covenant, to teach them about that. Number three, when the going gets tough, the people repudiate their covenant and start trusting humanity. God reveals himself and invites them to trust him. Initially, yes, they do it. Number two. Number three, then when the going gets tough, the people repudiate their trust in him and start trusting humanity, as symbolized by the surrounding nations. Number four, God says, what I said a moment ago, then those nations you trusted will turn on you. And we've seen Ezekiel saying this in love language. You went into their bed. You sold yourself to them. You paid them money to have sex with you. And then what? They got up out of the bed and beat you to a pulp. The nations you trusted in place of God will turn on you and destroy you. Number five, God will use that destruction, though, to get his people's attention. The prophets say, now when these nations come against you, don't think that they're doing this in spite of God. They're doing it with God's permission and even sometimes with his calling. That's five. One, God offers himself and invites people to trust him. Two, people initially trust him. Three, when the going gets tough, they repudiate their covenant with him and start trusting humanity, start trusting the world. But what you trust in place of God will turn on you and destroy you.